Hi, everybody. Welcome to Life Stories Podcast for the Love of Books. I'm Sherrow, your host. My guest today is Carolyn Sherrow. Carolyn wrote a book called My Personal Holocaust, where she talks about childhood trauma that she experienced but did not remember until she was well into adulthood. She tells the whole story of how it all came about and what healing looked like for her. This may be a difficult conversation for someone to hear if you have not yet dealt with trauma from your past, but what an encouragement she is to anyone who is afraid to take that step. She gives some practical advice. She talks about what she learned from her counselors, and she talked about what the Lord has shown her through all of this process. He was with her every step of the way, and I appreciate her boldness and her willingness to tell her story. May it be an encouragement to you as well. Thanks for being here.
Carolyn, thank you so much for being a guest today. I read your book, is it my own personal Holocaust? I don't have it in front of me.
My Personal Holocaust.
My Personal Holocaust. I appreciate how honest and vulnerable you were in that book, because I do believe that there are so many people out there, specifically women, but I'm sure there are men as well, who have gone through trauma, who I've met many adults who've never talked about it before. And it always breaks my heart, because I know from personal experience, you cannot be who God created you to be when you are holding on to stuff like that. And so I know it's not fun to talk about. It's not an easy topic to discuss, but I think it is so powerful when you can share your story of what you've been through and then what the Lord has done in you. And so can you kind of give an overview of your story and why you wrote the book?
Hmm. Well, let's start with why I wrote the book.
Okay.
I it was just a few months after my mom's memorial service, and I was thinking I need to get back to writing. It's been several years, and I asked God, "Okay, I've got 5 projects in mind. Which should I do first?" And He told me 2 things: update your website, write your memoir. So I did at that point, and I talked to my publisher about it, and he said that a memoir can be written either chronologically or topically. So that's why I wrote it the way I did, topically,
Yeah.
because I don't have any idea what the order of these things that happened were. But what I do have is 6 3-inch, 3-ring binders full of notes, session notes from my counselor, and that became my resource material. 'Cause I wrote it in 2025, 4, somewhere in there, and it wasn't hard to write it except for when I was going through the notes and I got triggered.
Yeah.
And I remember that happening several times, and one time it was bad enough that I had to call my counselor again and say, "Hey, I can't deal with this. What is going on here?"
Yeah.
But the thing is, I saw his name is Bruce, he's John in the book, it's okay. Um, I saw him for 9 years, every other week, and we chipped away, and the thing is, God does not bring up memories to hurt you.
Right.
He brings them up to heal them, and he never brings up more than is necessary to heal you. I know a lot of people are nervous about that, and they're afraid that it'll be overwhelming again and they'll get severe. Well, you do get triggered, but if your counselor is wise, and mine was,
Right.
they just go with it and encourage the child in that memory to talk and to be honest. And so many times, because I was dealing with childhood memories, the child that was guarding those memories took over.
Yeah.
And I heard myself talking in a child's voice and thinking with a child's mind, and it was absolutely fascinating.
Wow.
And it was so healing because we invited Jesus into the memory, and he reassured the child who was the guardian that it was okay, that he was proud of them. They didn't have to do that job anymore. And sometimes it took some convincing, and sometimes I didn't believe him at all, but most of the time it was like, "Oh, I can relax now." And sooner or later, they reintegrated.
But these memories, this is not something that you grew up from childhood into adulthood thinking about all the time. These were suppressed memories.
Let me, give you the history here. When I was about 45, I started waking up in the middle of the night not breathing, and I
Mm,
couldn't breathe in, I couldn't breathe
that's right.
out. I was terrified. I had asthma, but it wasn't that. I knew it wasn't that. And honestly, I was afraid I was gonna die alone in the dark and just terrified.
Yeah.
So I managed to, stumble to the bathroom and turn the light on, and that helped a little bit because then I had some light, and then after a little bit, my breathing eased up and it started working again. When I saw my doctor, he ran all sorts of tests, and he was so reassuring because he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "I know this must be really scary for you. We'll get it
Yeah.
figured out." And it's like, "Oh my gosh, somebody understands.
Yeah.
This is so terrifying." And so, he sent me to a pulmonologist who also did some tests, and I was wondering, "Why a pulmonologist? I already know I have asthma." You know? But, she did some tests and told me that I had severe vocal cord dysfunction. It was
Mm.
a manifestation of post-traumatic stress disorder. And she told me some more things. Among them, I have to tell you this, she told me the 5 characteristics of people that develop this.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was female, ages late 30s, early 40s, professional, perfectionistic, tend to repress their emotions. And she asked me if any of those fit me, and I had to tell her all of the above. They all like that.
Right.
But, through, the guidance of a speech therapist who taught me how to abort those attacks, and then also I contacted a, counselor from my church. She was the counseling pastor for a while, and she put me to the top of her wait list. I didn't even know she had a wait list. But she's on our second visit, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Do you realize you're dissociative?" And I had to go, "I don't know. I've never even heard of
Yeah.
that." It's not something you talk about regularly.
Right.
And so she told me about dissociation and what it entailed, and we started working the next session. And I worked with her for about 2 years, and then I switched over to my other counselor simply for the fact that, um I can't remember what I called her, Phoebe? And she closed her practice.
Yeah.
And so Bruce
I was so
opened.
heartbroken when that happened. But see, things had been going so well.
Yeah. And then, Bruce, my long-term counselor, I met him because I was volunteering as a Family Foundation's seminar assistant, and he was my trainer and then also my supervisor. We got to know each other, and then when he opened his practice, she closed hers. I was about a month from having a counselor, and it was
Yeah.
so God had his hand in it the whole way, I'll tell you
Sure.
that. And
Absolutely.
so like I said, I saw Bruce for 9 years, every other week, most of the time, and we went into some really, really deep memories, and he was always, when the child came up, he would speak as though he were speaking to the child, and he was, but it was so kind and so effective because he was talking to that part of my mind that was guarding these memories that the rest of my mind didn't remember at all. I had no idea what had happened to me until we were in those counseling sessions, totally repressed memories. I always say my memories of my childhood, it's like Swiss cheese. There's big holes and I don't even know what's not
Right.
there.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. We talked about that early on. You just don't know. I think one question that I have, and I don't if I ask anything that you do not want to answer, please, we don't have I'll take it out and it's not a big deal. But one thing I didn't understand was I know this was about all of this is about Freemasonry. It was issues that, you had been pulled into this, but I guess my question is, how did you get pulled into that? Was this a
Ah.
a family thing? Was like, I didn't that's one thing I didn't understand.
Well, I tried to keep it quiet in case other members of my family read it,
Okay, and
but
we don't have to talk about it. I can take it
I
out if you want
I
me to
don't
do that.
I don't mind talking about it because most of the people in my family are either gone or they live far away.
Okay.
So, but I think from the evidence, not from any memories that I have, but from the evidence that it was my grandfather
Okay.
who was kind of a wannabe, and
Yeah.
so he took me to the lodge, and then things happened.
Yeah.
So I think that was what the situation was, because my
That's kind of
father
what
and
I
mother knew
guessed.
nothing.
Yeah, I kind of guessed that, but I didn't understand. It is just it is amazing to me how God created our brains and our bodies and the ability to protect ourselves. I
Mhm,
mean, I could talk about this for days because I've been dealing with so much of it for the last couple of years. I've been reading The Body Keeps the Score, and
mhm.
I'm just in awe. I'm in awe of how God created us. It's just incredible. He knew exactly what he was doing.
He
So
did.
he did. You talk a lot about dissociation and you mentioned it earlier. Can you explain what that is to somebody that does not understand?
Sure. Um, in one aspect, dissociation is like a yardstick because normal, shall we say, people are at one end of it and dissociative people are on the other. Now, everybody dissociates, whatever their mental status is,
Yeah.
because dissociation in its basic form is just a mind vacation. You kind of, it's like when you drive down the highway on your way home, and all of a sudden you realize, I'm almost home and I don't remember most of that drive. It's
Right.
because it was familiar to the mind. And so the mind said, she's got this. I'm going to rest now. And
Mhm.
then and if something had happened to get your attention during that time, you would have, got come to attention and would have taken care of business.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're totally gone. You're just kinda, drifting. But as you go further down the continuum, you get into a little bit more severe dissociation, and then you get into the ritual abuse dissociation, which is what I had. I got this picture one day in my mind of the Rockettes. Are you familiar with the Rockettes?
Mhm.
Okay,
I
yay.
actually babysat a rocket at one
Oh
time.
my goodness.
Yeah.
She must have been very small at the time.
She was 2, but
Okay,
she grew up to be a rocket.
okay then. Um, when you're at one of their shows, you see a line. It's a chorus line,
Yeah.
and everybody's pretty much the same. They choose them because of that fact, and they're doing their kicks and their dances. But when one of them comes forward to be the lead, everybody else fades back.
Right.
That's how it is with dissociation. Most of the time, all the parts, the little ones, are in a straight line and everybody's got equal footing. But when something comes up that they have to have one of them be forward, the others fade back, and you deal with the one that is forward, whether that's a memory or what. And so it just is constantly, and you never even know about it really because
Right.
it's so well organized. And there they are, dancing in their dancing their little hearts out.
Yeah. Phoebe, or I mean, I know that's not her real name, but in the book you said something that she said, which I thought was awesome. Although it's considered a mental illness, it's actually a God-given aid to the defenseless. He allowed us to be able to do that to block out that pain and the scary things, which is, like I said, it's amazing that God did what he did.
Yeah.
It is. I lived in fear for a lot of years, and it is you said that it was like living in a prison, and it is. It is like being paralyzed in a prison, but when you live that way for so long, it seems like home, and it seems normal. As you started going through counseling for this stuff that you didn't remember for so many years, could you look back and see where you had lived in fear, or could you look back and see patterns in your life that you didn't realize were a result of stuff that you had been through?
In a word, yes.
Yeah.
Um, because once I have a science background, and once I had the data that I needed, I could form the hypothesis and continue on from
Right.
there. When the memories came up, most of the time I didn't remember them that from then on, but I had the written resources. And it was like any trauma response that I was watching what was happening in the memory, and he was taking notes and wrote it all down. And as I learned more about myself, about my background and my memories, it kinda was a jigsaw puzzle, and it started making more sense.
Yeah.
And it's just totally amazing to me that, like you said, the brain is so fascinating that we can actually take a memory that is too hard to bear and sequester it
Yeah.
so that it's safe. And then when the Lord thinks, "Okay, she can handle this now,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna go with her," then it can be, brought up,
Yeah.
and like I said, only the part that needs healing, and he can take care of it.
Yeah.
And
And he
then
does.
he does, and the memory doesn't change because it's historical, it's actually a
Right.
fact, but your feelings about it change, and that's what's so cool because the guardians, the little ones, they're protecting us against the lie we believed in that memory.
Yeah.
They're the lie actually will affect our lives, but it can be healed by truth, and that's what when Jesus comes in, he tells you the truth. And another thing that I'm not even sure I put in the book, but when I was in a lot of those memories, it was so intense and so frightening that I had tunnel vision, and all I was seeing was the thing that was right in front of me, and that was where the lie was coming from.
Mm.
And Bruce often said, "Lord, open her spiritual eyes." And then it was like the borders went back and my vision expanded, and I could see what was really going on. That
Right.
was amazing.
I think about people, and I talked about this a minute ago, people who have been through hard things like this, serious trauma, who have avoided dealing with it or thinking about it. What could you say to somebody who is listening to this and they know in their heart they've got things they need to deal with, but it is a scary thought to have to face all of that. I know it is. How could you encourage somebody that's listening right now in that position?
First thing is that remember, Jesus does not reveal the memories except to heal them.
Right.
He will never bring a memory forward to torment you. He's not like that. He's loving. Secondly, the biggest obstacle is not the fear, it's the hopelessness.
Yeah.
Because if you've got memories or situations like this, whether you remember them or not, you believe so many lies from your past that hopelessness comes in. And that and the fear stops you from going forward.
Right.
So what needs to happen is that you need to get hope. Whether you get it directly from God, whether you, you know how you're reading scripture and all of a sudden something pops out at you and you're like, "Oh my gosh, there it is." And also, I was so blessed to have this, is that I had several people that would speak truth to me.
Yeah.
They would they would say things like, "This is who you really are. You're not what you think." Or, you're not the
Right.
bad don't hate yourself anymore, in other words.
Right.
And I had some people like that, and it was so incredible because even if my mind didn't believe it, my heart received it at some depth and said, "Oh, maybe I'm not that bad." Because
Yeah.
the hopelessness, and it comes from a lot of different aspects, it, really makes you not want to go forward. but that fights with, I have to go forward. So, get hope in
Right.
there, and that resolves a lot of that issue.
Yeah, I love that. I've been through a lot of freedom ministry, and for somebody maybe that's listening that thinks they can do it all on their own, they don't think counselors are helpful, they don't think they need anybody else. What would you say to somebody that thinks that?
No,
Yeah.
you cannot do it by yourself. It's too hard. If you try to do it by yourself, it'll be very discouraging
Mhm.
because you won't get very far. Just because this is not something that is resolvable on your own. You need a community to work with. James Wilder and his group have a wonderful book that I used a lot of for reference that's called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You.
Oh, wow.
So good, talks so much about community, how to find a good community, and if you're in a community, how to kind of weed out the bad actors, so to speak, because you don't wanna trust the wrong people with your
Right.
stuff. But
Absolutely.
if you're in a community that's loving and supportive and they tell the truth to you, that's gold. It is
Absolutely.
just gold. Yes.
Uh, that's so good. So you met with John or, whoever for 9 years. Is this something that you are just completely healed of and it's all good and everything's wonderful and perfect or do you still have times when you have to maybe go back and pray some of the same prayers or walk through some of the same things?
I am continually finding and utilizing tools. And I will tell you about a month ago, I was feeling very anxious and I couldn't figure out what it was. And a couple of my friends suggested it might be an attack of the enemy, but that didn't feel right to me. And what I realized it was that I had at least one, maybe more little ones that were really, really frightened. And I realized from that one of the things that I was told, one of the lies that I was told when I was a kid was that if you tell anybody about this, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And it was either they're going to kill me or something else is going to happen or whatever. But these little ones were not healed enough that they could accept that they were not going to die. They still believed the lies.
Yeah.
And I called Bruce. I said, "This is what's going on. I'm not sure what to do with it." And he said, "Oh, you don't need to come in to see me for that. You can just do this." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And
Awesome.
yeah, and it was some of the things that we had done in my uh, counseling, but something that I could do myself and
Mhm.
talking directly to, and I did what he said. I talked directly to them. I asked the Holy Spirit to show them something about Jesus that they did not know, because chances are they didn't trust Jesus because that's
Yeah.
how it works. And an hour or two later, I realized, wait a second, everything's calm again. And it's lasted. So I know that they're calm, everything's going forward. And it never really started until I started doing the podcasts. Because when I wrote the book, talking out loud about it. But
Yeah.
on the podcasts, I am, and they were freaking out, but they're not freaking out anymore.
Yeah.
So it does happen that every once in a while I get triggered enough that it's not something that I can handle with God myself.
Right.
So I call and say, "Hey, Bruce, I need a session." He calls them tune-up sessions.
There you go. You know what? That's good. That's good. We all need that. And it's healing to be able to talk about it. It's not fun. It's not something, you bring up in every conversation, but it is healing. I think that's part of the healing is being able to
Mhm.
talk about
And healing is never linear. It goes
it.
up
Right.
and down, sometimes it goes around in a circle,
Right.
but the idea is just to keep going with God forward.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. One thing that you mentioned in the book were some misconceptions about healing. Like when people say to forgive and forget or pretend like it didn't happen or, time's going to heal all wounds. None of those are true.
Nope.
None of those are accurate. What can you say to somebody that's trying to believe, some of that stuff?
Well, don't try to believe it
Right.
because it's not true. Forgiving is not forgive and forget. Forgiving is simply releasing the perpetrator to God's judgment and giving up your right to get even and surrendering yourself to God, of course, in that process. Forgiveness is hard.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to um, not renounce, but to give up your right to get even. Because if
Yes.
you're not willing to do that, it's going to be even harder. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And forgiveness is also not judging the other person
Yeah.
because it's really easy to judge them for what they did. But releasing them to God not only releases them from your judgment, it releases you from the hold that they've had on you all this time.
Right.
Takes the
Right.
monkey off your back.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things that you talked about in the book was when you talked about bringing people to court, and it wasn't a real court, but that was such a good image to see, and I think a lot about it. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Shack.
Oh, I didn't.
Like, people either love it or hate it, and I loved it.
I
The
loved it.
In the movie, you talked about the book, but in the movie also, whenever they put him on the judgment seat to be able to judge, and man, that is not a position we wanna be in. It's so easy to point and they may very well have hurt us deeply, but we still cannot put ourselves in that position, and so I loved that you created that image and you talked about that, bringing people to court and, reading off all the things that they did wrong and which were accurate. You weren't wrong, but it was just very humbling to me to be reminded of that is not my job. As good as I think I am at it, it is not my job.
Right. Yeah. If I may, the pastor that taught me that, I actually was working with him several times to take people to court and also work with Bruce on it. And one time, many times, we came to a good conclusion. And I saw Jesus take them under his wing or whatever. But this time with the Masons, that hurt was so deep and so anti God that Jesus actually took them out of my courtroom in chains. It was just amazing to me. And I thought, oh, yeah, this is what needs to happen. I don't put the chains on them, he
Right.
does. And I don't put chains on me either because he doesn't.
Yeah. It's so good. I loved that you did that. So you are still working, through some things. You're writing again. You are being on podcasts. What else is going on with Carolyn right now?
I'm not going to tell you about my eye problem that keeps me off the computer and
We don't
makes
wish
it
that.
very hard to write. Um, about, well, it was in March 10th, actually, I was diagnosed with a posterior vitreous detachment on my right
Oh,
eye, which left me with a massive floater. I'm hoping that that the retinal specialist will decide that if he's going to take it out for me. He's going to
okay.
remove that huge floater. I call it my squid. Like it's got tentacles and everything. But so that's one thing I'm living with at this point. But I'm also writing a psychological suspense novel. And this is the first of a trilogy. So I'll be
Oh, yay.
getting those others finished. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they all explore what happens when evil tries to take over and then God triumphs in the end.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
That's a good ending to a
Yeah. And then I think that's really about all I'm doing, but I think that's enough.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. Well, I am thankful I got to hear your story and read your book. Thank you so much for letting me do that. Is there anything that I have not asked you about that you wanna talk to about before we go?
Oh. Well, I should tell you too that I have an audiobook. I taped it myself at
Oh,
the
you did?
studio.
Okay.
Yes. I was in Nashville last year taping the audiobook, so that's
Wow.
available too. And I've had people tell me that they can see me when they hear my voice, so that's
Yeah.
lovely. My theme verse for my work is Ephesians 5:11,
Okay.
and that says, from Paul writing to the Ephesians. It says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather expose them."
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. And then
Yeah.
I add, "Don't ignore them and hope they go away," because they
Right.
won't. Yeah.
Right.
So that is my theme, and I try to uphold that as much as I can because I'm called to this work.
Right.
And it took me a long time to realize that, but writing that book was the culmination of years of wanting to be able to get the news out, to talk
Yeah.
about it. And there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how God puts things together like that. He sees the end from the beginning, so he knew what needed to happen before you'd be
Mhm.
able to do it. And I'm just so thankful that you did. I know your book has helped many. I know it's going to because it's very powerful. So thank you and for letting me read it.
And you're totally welcome. And that's actually the thing is that it's got hope and healing on every page
Yeah.
and guidance for I've got appendices where there's guidance for counselors and for
Yeah.
church leaders, and it's a lot of wisdom in there, and I know God wrote it with me because there were
Yes.
times when I stopped and I'm like, "I don't know what to do," and I could feel his presence saying, "Go this way."
Yeah. And it's a heavy subject, but it's like you said, the Lord is in there. It's not for somebody that may be hesitant to pick it up because they're worried about it's not a hard read. It's you can tell that the Lord is, walked with you through that and it's very good. It's very good. So,
I appreciate you saying that because 'cause I've had people tell me they hesitated to read it because they were afraid it would trigger them or something.
you know, I mean, I can understand people not being afraid because it is when you've not broached the subject of your past or something traumatic that you've been through, it is scary to think about. But the book, I thought you did an excellent job of, yes, talking about what your thoughts were and how you were feeling during that time. But there's so much of your counselors in it. And so you talked about the Lord in it that it's not scary. It's not scary to read. So I thought you did a great job. But
Thank you for saying that.
yes. Well, thank you, Carolyn, for being a guest today. I so appreciate what you're doing. I'll make sure to have your website and your information available for people to find you whenever I post this, and I will be in touch soon.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to Life Stories Podcast. There are a few ways you can support me so that I can continue putting out great content. You can like and share this episode, send it to a friend that you think might be encouraged by it, subscribe to my channel, whichever format you're listening to, and tell people about my podcast. You can also buy me a virtual coffee. The link is below and it's also at the bottom of my website. Every donation helps me continue doing what I'm doing. Thanks for being here.